recording pending. What does that mean? There we go. Okay, so we'll do the session on testing now. And we'll do it in the context of the coursework. So the first thing is, obviously, we need to make sure that we're in the virtual environment and everything we've got is there. So we'll go put ourselves in the right place. There we go. And in our make file, we do have this make test. So we can check to see if the default is there. There we go. So we deleted dummy func, so this is no longer working. So yeah, but the testing is working. It's just telling us that something isn't there. But that's fine because we've been editing and messing with stuff. So we go and look in tests, and we've got this test dummy. That tested something and did some things which we've now deleted. So what we're going to do is replace it with something that actually makes sense. So what I'm going to do, let's go and look at the things that we've created previously and see if there's anything that's suitable for testing. So JS plugins, we had a bunch of things in here. So for example, grab output. Okay, so let's start with a test for something like that. Call it something sensible like test grab output. Import leap. I'm also going to import JS plugins, and I'm going to assert that, well, there's lots of things I could do here. Grab output is specifically made to test what we get back from a shell. Okay, so we could probably do with something that is not going to be too dependent on the system that we're on, or paths and things like that. So we either need to make it work out what the real path for something is, or so it can test it, or we check to make sure that it's something that is going to be completely independent of system. So let's have a think about what that could be. I know what we could do. We could probably make sure. What do I do? There we go. We could probably make sure that if we search exist message, that actually correctly passed something to which we know it's not going to find, and then we can check the thing that comes back. There's a small chance that there is going to be something called whatever we call it. LSS is probably a bad idea because people do alias that.
Really?
Hello.
Your bones. The little dad thing that's in the back of the room.
Michael. Okay. Are you okay?
What was that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm fine. Shut
Okay. We'll pretend that didn't happen. Okay. So let's go with which, and then something completely random. So something that definitely won't exist. So like maybe we'll call it does not exist, so that we actually know what it is, and then we know what we expect to be there. So let's try that out. So assert JS plugins dot grab output. Then because we're going to give it multiple parts, remember we're going to pass it a list rather than just a simple string, which that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say this first, and then I'm going to say assert len output is greater than 0, so we have to get something out of there. I'm also going to assert that output dot starts with it does not exist. I think wait, I've been writing multiple languages lately. I need to check I can. Sorry, I've also been doing JavaScript lately, Dan, and I'm getting really confused. I keep typing length and len and size and all sorts.
It's broken me. It's the comments, and it's right. It was for me last night. It was writing half the app in Python, the front end in JavaScript, and just switching between commenting systems. It was driving me mad.
Well, I'm doing exactly the same with the Santa thing. So like I've got JavaScript to display the stuff with Fabric.js on the front, but all the back end is done with socket servers in Python.
Oh, cool.
And switching backwards and forwards because you literally do both halves at the same time. And the number of times I've ended up writing JavaScript in Python and Python in JavaScript, and it takes me like a minute to realize what I'm doing. Anyway.
Yep. Are you using sockets or web sockets, just out of interest?
Well, actually, at the moment, I'm serving it as JSON through HTTP requests. Yeah. So I'm not raw sockets at all. It is HTTP server, but I am thinking of switching to web sockets just to speed it up.
If you take a look at my repo, I've got Java, I've got Flask serving web sockets, so it was trivially easy to do.
Okay. So currently, what have I got? Yeah, I'm doing this. I've got this HTTP monitor thing, which I'm using, which essentially just serves stuff as required, and then I just have a custom request handler to check the stuff out.
Yep.
Yeah. So it just literally all the server all the game objects keep themselves in a format that can be just dumped to JSON.
Yeah.
So it kind of works out. Anyway, that's an aside. Come back to that. So I'm asserting multiple things, right? So starts with is quite useful because no matter what you've got, until you've got something that doesn't match, you can just check that it starts with it. And the reason for this is that I'm thinking on different systems, I might end up with slightly different length of thing, or if someone changes which and maybe it's got coloured commands in it and that kind of stuff. Perhaps it will say not found in different things, or there's carriage returns on the end and what have you. So I'm going to go starts with does not exist, and I think I can also, if I look, what have I got? Not found should also exist in there. So I can also, if I imagine I get a reply, something like that. I think I can also check if a substring is in with in. So it seems like I've made it a complicated set of tests, but I'm trying to make them not dependent on actually checking every individual character in the string. So I'm checking that there's more than no output. There's more than nothing. I'm checking to make sure that it starts with the thing that I looked for, so we're getting the right kind of output. And I'm also checking to say it does say not found, and that should make it fairly robust in case of small changes. So we can try that out. And so now we can do make test, and hopefully, oh, there we go. 0 is not greater than 0. So there we go. It didn't work. Okay. So fantastic. This is extremely useful. So what can we do? I can first of all do a print of output. Actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to debug it over here. So we should get it's not passing the output, is it? No. Why? I think I know what I've done, but I wanted to go through the process. maybe this would be a better way to test it. Right, so like I say, I think I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is, but I'm going to go through sort of how I would debug it since we're in a testing example. So I'm going to run Python in the shell, and I'm going to recreate what was in that test to see what happens. Okay, so import JS plugins, JS plugins dot grab output, and I put in which does not exist. And we do get 0. Okay. Now, why is this? I've got a feeling that it's because I need to give the path to which. I kind of thought I would get something that just doesn't work, but yeah, that's weird. Or, I know, maybe which was a bad idea, right? Because I can guess. So we get some output there, but if I send standard error to dev null, oh, it's still there. Hmm. Okay. It wasn't meant to be quite such an exploratory thing. Thought I picked an easy one. Right. So we get output. Correct. But we don't get anything when it doesn't exist. Well, that's really weird behavior from which.
The man page doesn't suggest that it's going to send non-negative output anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You get the exit code that would work, but it doesn't suggest that it would send commands not found to standard out or anything else.
But it seems to be coming out to standard out when I'm displaying it, so it's somehow doing some really clever checking, which is now screwing up my test. Because the thing is, the reason it would do that is because you quite often use which to find something else.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to end up like you want to go like which this, and you want to be able to go, oh yeah, there was nothing, therefore it's this. But I thought when I checked it like this, which sends standard error to dev null, we'd get nothing, but we actually get output. And if I redirect standard output to dev null, it gets nothing, which means that is coming out to standard output, which is really odd. Because
what command are you using in Python?
It's actually just subprocess run and sending standard output as a pipe.
Because it might check the status code, and if it's not, hold on, just thinking through it, it might
possibly
check the status code. I'm just checking. Yeah, okay. So if you run check, then it will process. If a process exits with non-zero exit code, then standard out. No, it will capture standard out and standard error. So I don't know. Maybe subprocess run status code behind the scenes, and then if it's a non-zero status code, it expects it to fail. But that doesn't make any sense because failure is a good thing to know about.
Exactly. I can understand why it behaves the way it does, but I don't know how it's doing it. I don't know how, because clearly which knows when it's being run. Like,
yeah.
Anyway. What about if I said? If that comes out. See, look, that's That's definitely going through standard. Oh, I don't know.
Just out of interest,
hold on,
run
hold on.
sub. I was just
Oh,
you.
wait a
You
minute.
thought the same as me. So run sub process term and see if it runs it. Something nice.
Yeah, I've just realised it might. Let's just try it in here. There we go.
There we go.
It was Z shell. Right. Okay. Not the first, or definitely not going to be the last time that. Okay. So what we can do is we can check instead when something doesn't exist. We're going to do this. We're going to check to make sure the output is 0, and we're going to make sure it doesn't have this in there at all. Okay. So it's checking. Actually, if it's 0, we don't need to make that check. Right. So we just flip this around now that we know what it should look like. There we go. So we passed the test of things not working, but now let's get something that we know should work. It's going to be slightly less. Actually, let's try this as well, just in Python. CD. Because it's an alias, I'm just going to check what happens when we do this with it. Yeah, with it sub process. Okay, so we actually get the path to it. So the thing is, if the alias exists in the environment that it's running in, then we're going to get something like this, and if it's not, we'll get something like that. Okay, so that again, this is about making sure we have fairly robust tests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, right, where is ls, and then I'm going to make sure that the output is greater than 0. Okay, now there is a chance that if you're running something like BusyBox, this won't work because that's like a micro shell that has a lot of built-in commands rather than executables lying around. But I'm just going to have to live with that. That's just too faffy to fix that at the moment. So we're going to assert the length of output is greater than this, and we're going to assert that ls is in the output. Okay, so we're actually getting something sensible. I'm going to make tests from there. Okay, so there you go. It's still only one test because all those assertions come inside that one function, and that's fine. If you wanted to separate them out, you could easily just split them up. Have two different functions so that you get the two separate things. Which you've got to decide for yourself, but generally the rule on this is if it's really just small things and it's just multiple assertions to really sort of pin it down, then you're okay to keep them all in one place. If you think there's a chance that certain parts of it might fail in different ways depending on the system or depending on whatever the flaw is, then it's useful to have multiple tests because it helps you narrow it down. If you imagine your extremes on this is that you could have one function that does tests and assertions for all of your code, and you'd run it and you'd either get yes it passed or no it didn't, and then what? Then you've got to go and work out where it didn't pass, and you'll look at and you'll see which assertion doesn't pass, as you have seen up here. You can see where the assertions are, so that's useful. And so the other thing you can do on this is you can add a message after the assertion for what happens if it doesn't work. So you can do things like say which returned something other than an empty string when asked for a binary that shouldn't. Okay, so you can actually give some output. So let's say we accidentally put something that does exist in there and then did our make test. You can see here assertion error which returned something, and you can see you can still see the assertion that 8 was what it got back, but we expected it to be 0. So and we still get a message which didn't. So you can modify it a little bit as you go along. Okay, so that's the first part. I also said that we could check to make sure that things about the enumerations and stuff work. So there are things that you can do, so in here, for example, we know that this one is going to print a lot of data, so that's not particularly easy to test. So what I would have done, if I was doing this for real, I wouldn't actually have had this print all of the data. I would actually have it returning the data so that it can be printed outside. That's generally a good way to do things anyway, because you don't want the libraries and things that you load to be responsible for output. They shouldn't care if you're outputting it straight to the terminal, whether it's going to a file, whether it's going to, okay. One of the things that you're going to do is to, hopefully in the intermediate, is to direct all of your output to a file when requested. So one of the things you would do is you would modify this to not print, but return the data. So just so that we can test this stuff, I'm actually going to do that now, right? So I'm going to make that change. So out is equal to nothing. Classic thing again, I'm starting with an empty string. I'm going to add to it as we go along. So here, instead of print, I'm going to replace that with adding to the output, and I'm going to do it. I'm really lazy. So out is out plus that, add a new line on the end. Out is out plus, well, that's going to be where the new line goes, current user. And there we're using os.system, so I have to change that to grab output. Grab output. Who am I? Done. That's a new line, so let's put a new line on there. ID info. So here it splits it, grabs the output, and then it adds each one of these, but I'm going to add a new line on the end. No, not that one. ID info, there. Group info. Again, it splits it and puts each one. So let's do that. And I think that should work. Now we can test this. Again, it's always good to test in the sense that you're going to, does it run? Does it do what I think it should? Just eyeballing, as well as writing the test. So you don't have to just build the test. I'm just going to make sure that this is at least vaguely what I'm after. So Python 3. I mean, the best way to do it is to write all of your tests first, but it's not always a simple job to do it that way around. And this isn't a software development module. It's a introduction to programming module. So I expect a lot of things to be sort of evolutions of smaller pieces of code rather than big nicely architected things. Next year we'll come onto the design a little bit more and writing things that more thoroughly designed in advance. Okay, but for now, we do the same thing as before. So import, and then in there I've got this thing called host info. So hi equals js plugins dot host info. Doesn't take any parameters. hi.execute gives me a string. Okay, so that's good. Let's store it and print it and see what we get. There we go. So that's actually much nicer, right? It's a much better way to output the stuff in the first place, and we can check these things out. Now, how am I going to test that this actually does what I want it to do? Well, there's a few things that you can do. One of the things that you might want to do is to first of all find out what should be in there. Okay, so in Python, remember we've got the OS module and a bunch of stuff that it can do, and one of those, which one is it? Platform might be easier actually. So we only did this last week and I've already forgotten all the different ones. One of them on hosting. Okay, let's do it in platform. Yeah, there we go. So platform.node should give us that bit of information, which is the name of the thing, and that should be appearing as the host name in here. Now, the reason I wanted to do it with a library is because here you can see I'm doing it by grabbing the output of host name. So it's kind of a useful thing to have a second test to that finds it in a different way to make sure that the two things match up. In reality, I probably would have used platform here rather than just using grab output, and then I'd probably use something like grab output to get test, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to say test host info. I think oops. I'm going to make a host info object. And when it runs, so if I do h.execute, so output equals execute, I can assert that platform.node is in. Oh, okay, so I need to import platform. That. There. Let's try our test. Okay, so we tested the host info. We can see that that's in there. We probably also should have had assert the length of O greater than 0. It's useful to have these kind of simple tests because if there's a big problem, that's the first assertion that's going to fail, and you kind of know, okay, I've got no output. So when you see, the length is not right, it's not greater than 0, it helps you identify the location of the problem. If all I get is that actually, this isn't in there, I don't know whether that's because it's empty, because it's just wrong, because it's encoded in the incorrect format, blah, blah, blah. So, it's useful to have those early tests, even though really this test will tell you if it's working. This one is going to help you be a little bit more specific about the why, and that's kind of handy. Like, if you know it fails on this test, but this one didn't, it's at least giving you some output, so you can test various things. Okay. The other thing I would probably test in this, just to finish it off, is I would look at the fact that this is extending from an enumeration. So I can actually do a little test to make sure that that's still the case, that there hasn't been some sort of problem with that people haven't changed things in development. So I would do things like here I would have assert is instance h, then where did I put it? I think I put it plugins.py. Yeah. So this is my sort of general, thing. So we should be able to do is instance h. It says, are you an instance of this h plugins.enumeration, which I'm pretty sure should work because it's a subclass of it. Yep, so it works on that one, and we can also check to make sure it's an instance of the superclass of that, which is item. This might seem like it's overkill, but it's a good thing to do to test, because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the expected output from the inherited stuff also works. Okay, so you can see, for example, look here, we've got this def execute as a superclass, so they'll all get a blank version of this, which has no return, therefore will return none. So one of the things I want to do is I will say assert O is not equal to none, right? So that helps me check to make sure someone overrode it and it wasn't accidentally changed. Because now, if I accidentally, sorry, let me just check what that is. Sorry, Amazon. What was I doing? Oh yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I've checked to make sure that this isn't this, and then if someone accidentally, when or the person that's even using this accidentally sort of, changes something here, or even just does this and calls it execute by accident, a really simple typo, when we actually run the test, you can see here, this assertion that this is no longer equal, that this is not none, is the first one that fails. Okay, and that's good, because what we know then is that for some reason we're not returning things that we want. So it's a good test to make sure that we're not just inheriting the previous version and we're overriding it properly. So we can test that it's got the instance of those, and we can also now test in plugins. Look, we should also have this info thing that comes through. So, and if you look, info is then overridden by these, which then extends the functionality. So if it's a privesc, it has privesc at the start. If it's enumeration, it's got enumeration at the start. So we can also say that the info from this h.info, I can assert that enumeration in inf, I've called it here, and I can also assert that the specific information about this one is also in there. So host info, for example. Inf, and we can also check what else is going to be in there. We should check all of the fields really. So I'm going to just check that blogs is in there. And last one, I'm going to check that provides basic is in there. I'm not going to do the whole string. Okay. There we go. So we tested quite a lot about it. We probably should also test some of the other fields to make sure that they work. All of the other fields really to make sure that they work, and collect those things up. And that's the way I would go about this. So that's my bit on testing. Does that make sense to everyone? Hopefully.
Yeah, I have a question. Like, if I have multiple classes like grab output, I have the same function for all three methods. Do I have to just write it 3 times, or can I just write it once and then?
You can just write it once if it is the same method, right? So if they all call the same version, great. If you write it 3 times because you've put it into 3 different things, 1, consider reorganizing so you don't do that. But 2, don't just assume that they're always going to be the same if you've actually got 3 chunks of code.
Okay. Yeah, I have 3 different files for the 3 methods, and then inside of the 3 files I have 3 functions. Like the grab output, they do the same thing, basically.
If you're doing that, I would really suggest that you make a separate file that has maybe like plugin utilities. Put that function in there and then import that. That way you only have to test it once, and that's good practice.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I think the Amazon guy is just going up and down the street. My dog, now hates him. Mohammed, this question: what is JS plugins in the test? I called my file JS plugins, so I had to import that to get access to its contents. So that's just me testing my code. You've probably written yours in something with a different name, so call it whatever you need to call it. Import the thing that you wrote. Martin, this is a good question. So do we have to do it like this, or is there no other way? There are lots of ways to do testing. The reason we do it this way is because we're after a particular type of output. So this is something we call unit testing. And what you do is you test the individual components. One of the things that is useful about this is that you can make these tests, and then as you change your code, you extend things, you fix things, you improve it, you bring in new libraries, versions change of the things that you're making use of. You can just keep running that test, right? You've moved onto a new system, run the tests, and it automatically checks all these little things. When you're doing that stuff at college, that's a really basic introduction to testing. That's just getting you to do what a programmer must do in order to make sure that their code works for themselves. That's not the same as formal testing, okay? That is just, did that bit of code do what I think it did? Yeah, that looks okay. Now, that's fine, but that's not the same as having a unit test that tests all the different things. You might even go as far as writing yourself out a list of things that you're going to test it with. But think about it. The effort you're going to put in, keep trying to rerun that, and the chance of making a mistake is huge. Okay, so you still run the code. You saw me run it earlier and make sure it comes out with the kind of output that I want before I go much further, because I want to make sure they haven't made any typos, that I'm just going to fix there and then. But the unit testing is more about making sure that when you put these things together, they're all still going to work, that other changes aren't going to affect them. And when we do that and we keep running it, what we're doing is something we call regression testing. Okay, so we're constantly checking that we can go right back to those individual components and they all still work together. Okay. Okay, this question. You mentioned getting a list of privileges for different files operations before. Yes, I think that's actually a really good way to do it. Probably I would most useful would be knowing which ones have privileges that I can actually use. So which ones can be run by me. So that'd be a list of all the things I can read, write, and execute in interesting directories. So in ETS and stuff like that. I mean, writing and executing is probably the more important ones. You can read quite a lot. Specific files would be useful to know if you can read them. So if you can read the contents of Shadow, of course, that's always handy. But the other thing is to look for things that you can run with they've got the SUID bit set on them, or ones that can be run with SUDO passwordless, which you can find quite easily actually. SUDO -L, I think we'll do it. So you can see here what can be run, and if I can run certain things passwordless, it should tell me in here. I remember how to set it now. SUDO without password would be better. And generally, this is not a great thing to do. The set UID bit is probably simpler, but also not a great way to do a lot of things. So there we go. Wish me luck.
You're not in Vivo, mate.
I'm not.
No.
That's really good.
ViSudo detected that you used a proper OS.
I feel like I've just escaped a fate worse than death. Oh god, I still can't. I'm trying to use keys. Which keys? The page down will do. Paste with the mouse.
That's it.
So here we put in,
student wasn't your user.
Yeah, student is it. I was just thinking Stuart, but it's student dent.
Hang on. Student no password. So that will say you can run those commands without a password. So that looked fine to me.
It does, but I don't want those ones. I'm trying to. My fingers want to do Emacs key bindings, and Control K doesn't do what I want. So I can tell it here which things I want to be able to execute. So on this one, zoom in. They said you can do that command, which is restarts the HTTP service. So that's not a bad thing to have as a thing you can do, because it's really specific. It's not just the binary, it's the whole command. But they can also run, which probably is a bad one for them to have, because they can use that to send messages and all kinds of things that they shouldn't be able to. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it with
do less. Less is a good one.
Yeah, it's clearly
as an example
a bad thing to have. So this is one you should definitely not have. If you on a system that has this, that's a bad thing. So let me Control O, Control X. What now? I don't know. What's the?
Oh, you've got an error. You've got an error somewhere.
Yeah, trying to work out what. No passwords. Do I need to give it?
You might need to do bin /bin/less.
Oh yeah, give it the path. Hold on, let's find out where it is. User bin. User bin. Okay, that time it worked. So su-do -l should now show, look, that I can become root without a password to run this one thing. Okay, so if I did su-do -k, which would get rid of any cached credentials. So if you run su-do, like if I do su-do ls, it'll ask for the password, which is swordfish, and then if I do
-l again,
it doesn't do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do -k, and that kills any of the things. So if I do it now, then I'll have to put in the password. So just to demonstrate what's going on. su-do -l, Dan, sorry.
Yeah, just to demonstrate that here, because previously, remember, you were prompted for a password to get anything. As there's a no password command in there, you get shown what's available.
That's a good point. I hadn't realised
Just
that.
as a side note, I was wondering whether it hid stuff if you had the password, but no, it doesn't. So,
That's
but
really
if you've
interesting.
got anything that's because you need to know what's available if it's passwordless. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It absolutely does make sense. It's interesting that.
What I really like.
It makes you type the password in. Otherwise, though, seems like.
Sorry.
Go on.
Crack on. I was going to say what I really like about sudo is when I start writing stuff about how sudo works, and then you start looking at SUID bits and the rest of it. It's really cool to see the trail of how it all fits together down the chain. But
yeah, it's very clever. So yeah, but I mean the general takeaway for this is you don't do this, right? You don't have less in there, and if there's any command that needs to be run with super user privileges, think very carefully about how it works and whether there's a better way to do it. So lots of things now will instead have a service that runs with higher privileges and then has a way to interact with it rather than just give you running of commands. So things change. But right, so here we are. So that su-do -l is a really handy thing because parsing this out, that would be an absolute win if you could find that on a box, because I can do less x shadow and permission denied, but su-do, and there it is. Okay, and I can look through there. You can steal my password hash, which you don't need to because you've all got it. Well, you haven't got this one. I don't even know what her password is. So if you work it out, let me know. It's just there as a target person, so it's not really an issue. It's probably swordfish again, but it's got different salt. I have no idea. But you can see why that would be a really bad thing to do. And actually, there's probably worse things I could do with
there
less.
Is. If you type, I can't remember the entry command. I think it's semicolon. I'm pretty sure it's semicolon because the pager will let you start a shell. That's why I suggested less. But my brain's gone. I can't remember what it is. Hang on.
Okay.
Less. Here we go. So it is.
Oh yeah, because you can write to file with the commands inside, can't you?
It's not even that. You can just start a shell. You can start an interactive shell. So if you do try exclamation mark.
Yeah, it is exclamation mark.
There we are.
Blimey. Yeah, of course it is, just like Emacs.
So you can drop a shell inside less. So exclamation mark. There we are. Root user.
Who am I? Root. There we go.
And don't forget this tails also, guys, folks. This tails down. I got my black hat on. I should have my hoodie and pull the hood up. Right. This tails down for anything that uses a pager. So there's lots of commands that use this style of pager. So git log
Man
uses the pagers. The man files use a pager. So any of those things, you can drop shells using. So it's always a useful place to look. As I say, make friends with GTFO bins, and you're
Oh yeah.
Good for these things.
So just do an example with man actually, because that's user bin man. So now what we see is that we can do man. So if I do sudo man just to get the manual page for the manual thing, all looks perfectly fine. You know, not really an issue. At least with man, we can't just tell it to open random files. Actually, we probably can, but let's pretend we can't.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, general purpose tools, awesome. But again, we can drop shells. So yeah, there's lots of things that will do that. Like Dan says, yeah, the paging system is fairly generic.
Just 1 second. If you do sudo, I've got to try and remember how it works now, because you can also do it in a one-liner. So if you're stuck in a restricted shell like a netcat shell, not a restricted shell, a non-visual shell like netcat, you won't be able to bring the pager up, or you destroy your system by bringing the pager up, because it's not got a proper terminal behind it. But you can do this in a one-liner, but I can't remember what it is. I think it's just man minus C. So you would run man minus C from the terminal. I can't remember. It is. I'm pretty sure it's man minus C / bin / bash, and it will just run bin bash as for you.
Not capital C. Let's try. It should not be used, but. Ooh, Catman. That sounds interesting. Okay, let's try it anyway.
Oh, cannot in Catman. What is Catman mode? Yeah,
I have no idea.
It might be because you've got some because of bash. Hang on.
You can do sudo man.
Yes, which is what we were doing previously, but all we're trying to do is get to drop a shell instantly rather than use the pager. I have no idea what Catman is though.
No, I can't remember the commands. You can do it, but
okay. Well, we'll leave that as a puzzle for this system. No.
But yeah, there is a way you can feed it a command to run instantly.
What about this pager equals pager?
No, that will just do it to less. So what you could do.
Yeah, but you're setting it to something.
You may use shell quoting. Yeah, so that might work as well.
So if I said, let's say man minus, was it P?
Yeah. No, you're still inside. No, I don't know, but it's doable. I can't remember what it is. Or at least I'm pretty sure it's doable.
No, there we go.
Well, now you're running something.
Yeah. Ooh. Anyway, this is a different thing. This is definitely not to do with the coursework anymore. Well, it sort of is, because you could also use it as an exploit if you find that man or less or something like that has it. So, Ben,
that's on my list of stuff to play with. I'm writing too many at the moment. My favourite type of exploit along this is still wildcard expansion. So I think it's magic, man. It's magic, but we won't go there today.
Okay, I think that's probably all the stuff that we've got on testing. Hopefully that covers stuff. If I've missed anyone's questions, then let me know.
James, as the previous coursework, this will require all the source code in the document. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. To be honest, we can go and look at the repositories, but it takes time, so it's a lot easier for us to mark. but also it means that when you submit the stuff, it goes through Turnitin, so we have to have you submit everything for that reason anyway.
And you don't want to see any results of the code running, do you? Like in the previous one where we might have a...
It's nice to see.
Sure.
It is nice to see. I'm not going to mark people down for not having it because one of the reasons is because you can test it a million times and see different results every time. But just showing that it works is quite nice. Stick it as an appendix would be quite good.
That's not going to be part of the word count, is it?
No.
Brilliant, thank you.
And for that, I would accept screenshots as well, which automatically don't count in the word count. But don't try and use that to get around the rules, Agnes.
What if we take a picture with the iPhone of the computer screen and then import that into the document?
I know I shouldn't have gone on for 10 minutes on that one topic, but I just couldn't stop. Like, even when I was getting angry about it, angry is not even the right word. Exasperated is the thing. It's sort of all the things to do. Anyway, hopefully whoever it was doesn't do it again. So, right, I'm going to stop recording on this one because I think that's useful as its own piece.